Welcome back to Crown Chats. I'm thrilled to welcome today's guest. You may recognize him from films like Furious 7 or The Conjuring, various hit TV shows, or, like me, you were also Team Matt when he starred on Fuller House. He has since become a Hallmark fan favorite in films like Lights, Camera, Christmas, The Christmas Contest, Christmas on Cherry Lane, and his recent holiday hit, Following Yonder Star. Please join me in welcoming the powerhouse, John Brotherton.
Oh man, wow! Thank you so much. That was I think I need to hire you as my publicist. That was quite the intro. That was very sweet. I'm in my office right now. Pardon me. We're between moving stuff around and lunch actually that I have to deliver to volunteers. So I'm glad I caught you. So pardon my office here in transit, but thank you so much for having me.
So to get started, let's just go a little bit into your background. What is it that got you into acting and eventually film and television?
Yeah, I have to give all that credit to my mom. I grew up with a mom who had a love of the arts. Not only was she an artist, but just really had a love of film and television. And so in my home, we watched films. We didn't watch, or her version of, I would say, films, taking me to the art house versus taking me to like the typical blockbusters. And then we'd go and I'd sit, as a young boy when I was 7, 8, 9, and we'd sit at the dinner table and talk about the directing and casting and costumes and the whole thing. And I just thought this was normal, like table talk. But I was like your typical, boy that liked to like go outside and rough and tumble and play with, sports and all that. So at the same time, like I had this love for art, I was also like, your kind of classic jock. And so I jumped between the worlds. And when I was in like starting kind of in junior high in the summer, my mom sent me to these drama camps. And it was funny because I'd go from like, football to then like drama camp. And it was this incredible experience. And I just fell in love with it, but I never considered it a career, which was probably the healthiest way to fall in love with the craft. And we were doing things, we did Shakespeare, we did Bye Bye Birdie, we did Into the Woods. We were doing like fun stuff at a young age with really talented people. In fact, one of my castmates, Ari Shapiro, went on to Yale and is now an NPR, one of the main hosts on NPR. Really talented people were doing this small little program in Portland, Oregon. Anyways, fast forward, that was like a seed that planted my love for it. But, I went on to college to like study business and the whole thing, and it was really focused in that world, but always had this like love in the back of my mind, but never took it seriously like a career, more like a fun hobby. And then it wasn't until I started really dipping my toes into the business world and had an internship that ended up being a disaster. The company was falling apart. Fortunately, it was a bad experience because what it did is it enabled me to step back and go, wait a minute, what really makes me happy? And sure enough, this thing over here that I had, been doing for years, but never considered. My mom had always told me, go to Hollywood, do your thing. But I was like very serious. I was like, no, I got to put a suit and tie on and, be in corporate America. But truly my soul was like, no, dude, you're full of shit. And one day it all clicked, and it was a one moment in time. It all clicked. And I called my mom. I said, I'm going to graduate, but I'm moving to LA. And she's like, hallelujah. Which is bless her, because usually it's the other way around. When you're saying that, your parents are like, what? My mom was so supportive. And she just, listen, I come from a lot of love, maybe not a lot of means. So it's not like she just said, spread your wings and fly. I didn't have some like legacy I had to live up to, which was actually very freeing. She just said, she like kicked me out of the nest and said, just go conquer the world, do whatever your heart desires. So I credit her for all of it. And then, I credit my wife along the way. She's been with me 20 years. She's been my backbone through the career, which has been, that's when it gets nitty gritty, when you have to like actually start working. Because I got here in 2003 after college, and then it becomes, and then you have kids, it becomes real. It's like, and now you got to keep insurance going and all the things. They're like, wow, this started as a fun hobby on stage when I was 10, and now this is serious business. But I feel very blessed. It's been a wild ride, but a very blessed ride.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad family is so important to you. I think having that foundation and base, it helps kind of, one, how you approach everything, because parts of it you have to take seriously, but also parts of it you realize like at the end of the day, certain things are just a job, but you truly know what matters. And I think that's
Yeah.
very apparent in your various performances, but also some of the projects
Ah,
that you choose.
well, thank
Um,
you.
yeah.
We were saying this yesterday. I feel so lucky that they've timed out that way with my children, where they got to grow up running around the set of Fuller House. They didn't even really get it at the time, but now it's part of their like magical memories. They got to bring their friends and sit in the audience and play like, laser tag running around up and down the stairs with the cast and just fun stuff that, at the time they didn't even realize wasn't, quote unquote normal. Clearly not the normal that I grew up in Beaverton, Oregon. So it's been such a blessing to be in that sort of family space, which Hallmark also is. And so I just, my family is everything. So to be in that world in entertainment, it's just been like a double blessing. It's a double rainbow.
And you get to make the rounds and make appearances in some of the top TV shows of the time, from CSI to Dexter to one of my favorites, Two Broke Girls, and many more. And then big screen hits like Furious 7 and The Conjuring. How does Fuller House come to you?
So funny about that project because it's the weird way this business works, because you fight so hard for every job and you're told no most of the time. And you have lots of second places and they don't pay and no one hears about it. And then every once in a while something comes to you and it's like a wink from above. And that job came to me. I got a call from my agent one day and they were like, most of the time you audition for stuff and sometimes you're lucky enough not to have to audition. You're just offered. And it was the situation they're like, because it hadn't come out yet. So no one knew what to expect. And no one else had done the reboot. Everyone had done a reboot with a new cast, like, a new Hawaii Five-0 or a new whatever, but no one had done a reboot with the same cast. And so it was very experimental. And, a lot of networks had said no to it. But so Netflix was taking it on back when Netflix, it was funny because we were kind of part of that early Netflix wave. And I get this call and they say, hey, you remember Full House? I'm like, of course. And they said, did you hear it's coming back? And I was like, I kind of heard something about that. Yeah, what's up with that? And they said, well, there's this situation where they want you. Do you remember when you shot an episode of Partners, which was it was a show that was on for a quick minute with Martin Lawrence and Kelsey Grammer. And it was basically the same production company, right? And they had kind of like, seen me do this and say, hey, there's this role that's going to be, frankly, just a few episodes. It was going to be 5 episodes. And they want you to play an arc, to play the kind of temporary love interest to cause a conflict with. They were like, you remember DJ? I was like, I actually didn't watch Full House. So I was like, yeah, of course I remember through pop culture, but I didn't necessarily know storylines. And so I was like, yeah, of course, I'm in. Great. That sounds like a blast. And then they said, well, it may, if you're lucky, it'll turn into 8 episodes. Well, 5 turned into 8, turned into 9 in the first season. And then they invited me to be part of the cast, for the remainder, which was one of the funnest rides in my life. That show was so fun to make. The cast was the crew, there was not a bad egg in the bunch. It was so much fun. There was something cool and refreshing about having them all come back together and not be in competition with each other. They were just supportive of each other. You do a new show and a pilot, you get a lot of individuals that are all vying for like the spotlight or whatever. These were family. They were like, it was so cool to witness. They were just supportive of each other, which made it just like we could just focus on the work and making great product. And there was no drama in that regard. And then I was more worried about stepping on toes that first season, and they all couldn't have been cooler. They just welcomed the new cast in, and we all became family, and it was such an honor to be a part of that run. It really was. It was and it was a treasured stage. It was the Friends stage at Warner Brothers, which was the original Full House stage. Every bit of it was magic. It really was. It was so fun.
And obviously, the chemistry between you and Candace Cameron Bure is undeniable, and so much so that the two of you get to star together in the Hallmark Channel Christmas movie, The Christmas Contest, one of my favorites. What was it like to work with Candace on a different project, especially being welcomed into the Hallmark fan base, and just with the different pacing, production style, and just being new characters in a new environment.
Well, man, I love her so much. Not only is she an amazing friend, I also, owe her a lot because starting on Fuller House, like she could have treated me however she wanted in that situation, but I stuck around, which was awesome. And then for it to transfer over to, it was sort of an homage to our fans, and people that were still rooting, the team Matts out there. And so it was cool. It was like a natural transition to jump from, even though she's not at Hallmark anymore, and I'm just rooting for her. I just hope she just always conquers the world. I still adore her. She was the one that brought me over to Hallmark. I mean, it was, I remember sitting there because it was the COVID summer. And I'm sitting at the beach in New Jersey, thinking, what is going on with everything in the business and life? And this is wild. And she called and she's like, hey, I've got this movie in this situation. You want to come do a Hallmark movie? I was like, heck yes. And so we had a ball doing that. It was fun because we got to play exes, which just made sense because it was just like it carried over. It was, I literally remember the first scene that we went to shoot, and it was like her and I almost had the giggles because it was like, here we are, like picking up right where we left off, playing exes. The first scene is our it's like a reverse meet cute. It's like when you run into your ex, right? And so it was such like, man, it was just a blessing. It was an overture. It was like, an over blessing from Fuller House. And then from there, that led to Hallmark kind of keeping me around a little bit, which has been amazing because I've just adored every project I've done with them. And it's just got great people, great actors, and a great fan base.
I have to say, you are truly brave to dive into not just the Fuller House world, an extremely established fan base, but also to the Hallmark Channel world, who also has a very loyal, passionate, and dedicated fan base. For you to be the new guy to both was probably intimidating at times. Which of the groups was maybe more surprising to you, or did you maybe have a little bit of a challenge to prove yourself with?
Well, it was interesting going into the Full House world because I was people had an immediate opinion, not necessarily of me, but my role within the show, because if you grew up watching the show and you love DJ and Steve, like, who's the new guy, right? So it was like an immediate opinion right away of me. So that was an interesting but awesome at the same time, because like it also is like part of the fun, right, is to be in the drama. So I wouldn't say either was unwelcoming, because that's the beautiful thing about both the world of Fuller House and Hallmark is like you can be as dramatic as you want and it's still not going to be like unsettling. But I would say having some fans that were just ultimately, no matter what, die hard, like Team Steve, not that I got any kind of like nasty messages, but I've certainly received a few through the days of, listen, nothing compares. When I was on a soap opera, I heard it all. So whatever Team Steve tries to throw my way, it's more like throwing water balloons and TP versus, rocks and eggs. It's all fun.
Maybe even Scott now have to do a Hallmark movie together, and they'll be like, see, like, we're all cool. It's all fine now. But
listen, every time him and I get together, we say we hope that we get a chance to one day do something in the same sense, sort of fashion, where, that odd couple, polar opposites, but best friends, frenemies, whatever it may be. We just hope to. I just adore him so much, and it's so fun when you work with someone that you have like such natural banter, but you're so different. Like we're totally different, and which makes it so fun. And he was so generous too, because he could have treated me any way that he wanted, and somehow felt some sense of like, territory or whatever. He just wasn't like that. He was so welcoming, and has always just been a good friend. So
And that wraps up part 1 with the powerhouse and multi-talented actor, John Brotherton. Stay tuned for part 2 coming soon. And if you love what you're seeing here, please be sure to like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. And of course, follow me, Haley, at Crown the Halls on Instagram. And don't forget, we have some sweet new summer styles with our Dressing Festive collaboration. Check out the link for that in the episode, as well as in my Instagram bio. So until next time, wear your crown. Your crown may tilt, may it never fall, but you are beautiful and you are strong.